How we going, folks? Welcome back to the Nightmare Cabin and welcome to day one of our Judas Priest series of Countdown to Invincible Shield. So it's the 19th of February and now every day until the 8th of March we're going to be reviewing an album by Judas Priest. We're going to go through the whole catalogue, counting down to the day of release of Invincible Shield. Just like I explained in the intro video that I did the other day. Just thought I'd do something a bit different. I was planned on doing retrospective anyway. And when I'm doing the big long retrospectives, it can be a bit, I've done some ones that are like an hour and a half long and you go into all this detail. I've just wondered how it would work if I did one in snippets and could I give each album a bit more breathing space that it deserves. So, yeah, here we go. Rocka Rolla, 1974. Let's have a look if there's anything good in here. I've not opened this in ages. Yeah. Photos of the band there. So, could this have been any more basic? What's this though? We can talk about. I ain't got time to read that. But yeah, the thing with Rocka Rolla, I suppose everyone knows this by now. Not everyone explodes out the gate. Not everyone does Kill 'Em All or Iron Maiden straight away. Some bands take a little while to develop, and I think that's something that is missing from today, actually. And bands aren't really given a chance to find their feet and find their own sound. It's either put an album out and it's got to, sell millions, or that's it. You get one chance and one chance only nowadays. And yeah, I don't really think that's fair. But so Judas Priest took an album or two to really become Priest, and the sort of heavy metal juggernaut I don't think even came until later on, but retrospective and all that. But we can cover that as we go through each album, and it'd be nice to see to really sort of analyse the band's development as they go along. So just to 1974, so let's get a bit of context here with I generally think Black Sabbath were the first heavy metal band. I think I watched an interview recently with Jeff, I can't remember his surname, from Possessed, and the whole topic of who was the first death metal band, or who was the first death metal album. And I think he summed it up quite well. He said, we were the first death metal band, he went, but all of the bands created death metal, And I've also said, unwittingly invented by Possessed, perfected by Death, and I think heavy metal was unknowingly invented, accidentally invented by Sabbath, perfected by Priest. Apparently the first ever heavy metal album, in the UK at least, to be released with heavy metal as the genre, so it'd be pop, blues, jazz. The first one to actually be released officially as heavy metal was a Judas Priest album. I'm going to look into that though, and see how true that is. But yeah, so 1974, just to see what, give you a feel of what was going on at the time. By 1974, Black Sabbath were already 5 albums in. Deep Purple had just released Stormbringer, so they'd already been through a load of lineup changes and quite a bit of development. There was no Motorhead, 1974. And AC/DC hadn't even released an album yet. This is a year before AC/DC released their first album. So a lot of people sort of crap on this album, but I think they don't take into context that how early in the game it was and how much heavy metal needed to develop, And then, we got a long while before the pinnacle year, that is 1980. So, much like the first 3 Thin Lizzy albums, the first 4 Depeche Mode albums, for example, I know that's not heavy metal, but the point remains the same. I'm trying to think as well. You could even say the first 2 Iron Maiden albums. There's that early period that perfect is the first 3 or 4 albums of Fleetwood Mac, for example, where you get this era of a band where it's kind of a different band. It's just the same name, and it's kind of become separate to the rest of the catalogue, and the band as we know it and love them today will really start on that album. And the live set and the greatest hits and all that sort of comes from that bit onwards. Oh shit! And period of the band is just sort of left as a separate band. And I find if you look at the first three Thin Lizzy albums as a separate band, you enjoy them a lot more. And I kind of think that with the Paul Di'Anno era of Maiden, really, I kind of just separate it from the rest of the catalogue. And I think it's best to do that with Rocka Rolla, because we'll get to it, but I find Priest really find their feet on Sad Wings of Destiny, the next album. So just separate this from the rest of the catalogue and just listen to it as an individual album. I think you'll enjoy it much more. From Genesis to Revelation as well, the first Genesis album. You know, what we know of as Genesis, the whole concept of Genesis didn't really start until Trespass. That first album was just recordings of the band were doing just to make music, and they weren't really aiming for anything. But it's nice to have, and I think this is it. This is a nice album to have in the collection, but buy it last, you know. So, sound-wise, yeah, again, we're a long way from what we would recognise today as Judas Priest, but it's quite... Think Cream, think Zeppelin, Deep Purple, so on and so forth of the day. And it's very bluesy in places. Let's go for the lineup as well. You've got pretty much a staple lineup. It's only later on that things get a bit wobbly with Priest. So, yeah, you've got Bob Halford on vocals. He's known as Bob at the time. Obviously, Glenn Timpton and KK Downing on the twin rhythm and leads guitar. Ian Hill on bass. And this time we have John Hinch on drums on this album, who's sadly no longer with us. The drum style in Judas Priest is a bit of a revolving door in the early days. Again, we'll go through that album by album. Yeah, they're about 4 or 5 albums in before they actually find a staple drummer. But yeah, so opening with quite a bluesy number called Out on the Road. It's quite catchy once you hear it a few times. That dun-dun-dun-dun, out on the road, dun-dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun-dun. And yeah, it's just a good little crawl in. It kind of builds up as it goes along. Dun 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 dun. You know, it's very bluesy, very cool. And then you get Rocka Rolla, which has got like the most annoying riff in the middle of it during the chorus. It sort of goes with this diddly 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 diddly. Don't know what's going on with there. Then out of nowhere, you get like a trilogy of songs smack bang in the middle of the album, which I guess is the Winter trilogy, I suppose. So you've got Winter, Deep Freeze, and Winter Retreat. Now, Winter is kind of just the intro. It's basically Winter and Deep Freeze are just one long song, but it's cut in half for some reason. But it's got a quiet intro, and then it kicks into this big riff, and then it goes into like a drum pattern as it builds up again, and then that's when we're into Deep Freeze, which basically just continues as it goes along, really. But then we get Winter Retreat, which is quite a nice, mellow little song, actually. It's like a nice acoustic, clean guitar. And yeah, it's nice. It's the best way to put it, really. Cheetah is a bluesy one. It's quite a good little rocker, actually. And you even get a bit of harmonica on that, on Cheetah. And Run of the Mill, though, I think... Well, no, what have we got first? Yeah, Never Satisfied. That's quite a good song, actually. Again, quite bluesy, got a real good sort of driven riff at the beginning of that. And if you remember, do you remember when Judas Priest did that farewell tour that they booked another tour and did an album immediately after it finished? Well, on that tour, they made a point of playing at least one song off every album in the set list. Didn't play nothing off Jugulator or Demolition, mind, but we'll get to that later. But they pulled Never Satisfied out of the bag and did a really good sort of heavier rendition of it. But it's a good song nonetheless. It's a bit basic on this one, but the modern version of it, you kind of Never Satisfied would probably fit on Sad Wings of Destiny or Sin After Sin. That one is one of the better ones. It's all good, but you know what I mean. Run of the Mill is the standout song for me on this one. Very Deep Purple, but it's sort of like a ballady sort of song, and it sort of builds up into this climax. And it's the first scream, the first Halford scream is on that one, where he just gives it. Ah! Can't believe I could do that. And think Deep Purple. What's the word? Child in Time. And this is where the penny drops. It's amazing when you listen to Deep Purple, and then how much Ian Gillan is an influence on the metal singers, that we love today. So think Rob Halford, and then after that you got Bruce Dickinson, so on and so forth. And yeah, it all really started with Gillan, and hearing that sort of Deep Purple feel on this song, yeah, you just make the connection. It's really, really good. And then it kind of just comes to a slow stop, really, with Dying to Meet You, which is another, more of the same, really. And then you got Caviar and Meths, which I think is just like a little outro song. I think that might even be a instrumental, yeah. You get a bonus track on this one. You get like an early rendition of Diamonds and Rust, which is interesting. But yeah, it's a solid album. It's just very different to what the band would go on to do. And it's just an interesting little artifact, really. Like I say, if you are new to Priest, well, if you're doing this series with me, then yeah, go for it. Listen to it today. But if you're looking to buy Priest, then yeah, get that last. You don't really need it. But it's an interesting album, and listen to individually on its own merit, with like, forgetting what comes later. Yeah, I think it was a solid enough album that's of its time. But yeah, I think it's got a charm to it, and I enjoy it. Yeah. So thanks for watching, everyone. And like I say, we're going to be doing an album a day up until the release of the new album, Invincible Shield. So I'll see you tomorrow for Sad Wings of Destiny. Take care.